The Galactic Council's chambers glittered with the cold light of 1,000 stars, refracted through translucent walls made of compressed starlight crystal. 12 species sat in a silent ring, their translated voices threading together in a soft mechanical hum. Towering above them all was Commander Drelt of the Von Dominion, an apex predator species with a crown of ridged bone and gold-veined skin that shimmered like molten armor. Drelt leaned forward, resting his six-fingered hands on the edge of the table, eyes narrow and gleaming. "Let us not waste time with Earth," he said, voice deep and gravelly. "Their species is flumbly at best, emotional, illogical, driven by impulse rather than structure. They are barely above pets." A few chuckles rippled across the chamber. The word flumbly, an intergalactic slang for weak, clumsy, and barely competent, had become a running joke among council members when referencing humanity. The Sylphian speaker, a crystalline being with constantly shifting geometry, chimed in with a musical ring. They once mistook a galactic diplomacy drone for a food vendor. You remember the footage? One of them tried to pay with a plastic card. Even the more composed members couldn't suppress a smirk. Earth's early attempts at diplomacy had been chaotic, their representatives lacking neural enhancements, overwhelmed by foreign atmospheres, or simply too naive to navigate galactic customs. Most species had achieved interstellar travel through centuries of evolved cooperation. Humanity, as the Von liked to put it, tripped and fell face first into the stars. But the laughter faded when the Council received the latest report from the Helion Drift. A forward observation post, one of Von's, had gone dark. No distress beacon, no security alerts. Just silence. The last message was garbled static and a single, unintelligible transmission. Sharp breathing, then a loud crack. Erelt dismissed the report with a wave. A reactor malfunction, at worst. Those were new recruits. Still, he authorized a patrol. A Von scout team would sweep the area, restore order, and confirm the laughable theory that rogue Earth operatives might have wandered too far beyond their planet's reach. They did not return. The following day, a new report arrived. A thermal scan showed scattered body signatures, all Von. No enemies in sight. But what caught the Council's attention was the pattern. Each corpse displayed a single, precise trauma wound. One strike, no misses. From a distance that suggested impossible precision. That was when the tone shifted. While the Council debated retaliation, Earth's delegation remained silent. Not absent, present, but observing. Quiet confidence from a species so often the butt of jokes unnerved the more perceptive council members. Drelt found their silence insulting. "Do they think themselves capable of shadow warfare?" he barked. "One shot and we think they've evolved. They cannot even aim without machine assistance." He didn't know he was wrong. Very wrong. Back on Earth, high in the Colorado mountains, Miko Vance lay prone beneath a thick layer of pine needles and frost. He hadn't moved in 2 hours, eyes fixed on a camouflage drone drifting across the sky. It passed without detecting him. He blinked slowly, heartbeat steady, his body heat artificially suppressed by a patchwork of passive tech and old field tricks. Years ago, he'd been Earth's best long-range engagement specialist, a sniper. But when the political tides shifted and Earth signed treaties with species that mocked them, the military trimmed its sharpest edges to seem less threatening. Miko was quietly discharged under the euphemism operational redundancy. Still, someone had remembered him. A month ago, an unmarked visitor came bearing only a sealed file and a question. "Would you like to matter again?" He hadn't needed time to think. Now, in the Helion Drift, beyond Earth jurisdiction, past the recognized edge of council-controlled space, he watched the Von move with practiced arrogance. They assumed they were alone. They were wrong. His rifle was not sleek or alien. It was old Earth tech, modified with a few scavenged upgrades. Simple, silent, deadly. He adjusted his scope, accounting for wind, gravitational interference, and movement cadence. He took a breath. A heartbeat later, the Von squad leader dropped, a clean hole between his upper ocular plates. The rest scrambled, shouting in their guttural native tongue. Miko didn't move. He waited. Another lifted a communication device. Another shot rang out. The device clattered to the ground beside its now limp hand. 2 shots. 2 kills. No alarms triggered. No energy signatures exposed. Back in the council chamber, silence had shifted into something heavier. Not amusement. Not irritation. But hesitation. Erelt stayed at the display in disbelief. "They don't have weapons that's silent," he muttered. "Not ones we've seen," corrected the Kirel emissary, who hadn't laughed once during the earlier discussion. Her people knew better than to mock unpredictability. "We should not have sent children," she added. "We should not have assumed." Erelt's pride burned. It was one man. The Kirel emissary turned slowly to face him. "And he has not missed." The council agreed to escalate, but quietly. They couldn't let the wider galaxy believe a flumbly species had bested the Vaughn. And so, under the guise of diplomatic reinforcement, an elite Vaughn retrieval unit was sent to Helion Drift to secure or silence the unknown attacker. Miko saw them coming long before they landed. His fingers flexed against the grip of his rifle. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply waited. The second team arrived under the cover of dusk, their landing silent, masked by a dispersion field that flickered like bent light against the Helion sky. 7 Vaughn soldiers, this time veterans, not recruits, slid into position with cold, deliberate efficiency. They moved as if the environment belonged to them, armored claws clicking softly against jagged stone, optics scanning for signs of heat, motion, sound. Nothing. Only wind and dead silence. Miko watched them through a scope that hadn't left his eye in 6 hours. His breath came slow and measured. Inhale. Count. Exhale. Count again. He'd once been trained to snipe through battlefield chaos. Moving targets, screaming allies, burning equipment. This was easier. Quiet. Still. Predictable. He marked each one mentally. Unit leader, bulky center formation, slowest reaction time. Flankers, aggressive gait, twitchy optics, likely to panic. Rear scout, small, agile, relying too much on tech. All weaknesses catalogued. He didn't shoot. Not yet. The squad fanned out near the remnants of their previous team's encampment. No bodies remained. Miko had dragged them away days ago, stashed beneath rock formations when native predators would make identification impossible. Let them think ghosts did it. They deployed a drone, hovering, nearly silent, with a scanning lens the size of a thumbnail. It pulsed infrared, ultrasonic, even ion trails. Miko barely moved. His suit absorbed excess heat. His heart, conditioned from years of stress, barely ticked above resting. The drone swept past. He waited another 20 seconds. Then he shot it through its power core, mid-glide. No sound, just a flicker and a fall. The squad froze. The commander raised a clenched fist, signaling hold. Area compromised. They are still here. Correction, a gravelly voice replied through their comms, crackling over an untraceable frequency. He is still here. They spun around. One soldier fired blindly into the distance. Nothing. Miko was already gone from that position, sliding quietly through a path he'd mapped 2 days earlier. The terrain favored him. Crags and ridges, multiple elevation levels, a natural maze. He knew every angle, every shadow. They didn't. In the council chambers, the footage played on a secure channel, relayed live from the Vaughn squad's neural feeds. What had begun as a routine sweep was devolving into confusion. Miko's voice-over comms had sent tremors through the observers. No Earth tech was supposed to override Vaughn frequency locks. "How is he inside their system?" asked the Sylphian speaker, tone now tight with unease. "Is not," replied the Kirel emissary. "Is mimicking it. He knows their encryption rhythms. Is listening." Drelt clenched his jaw. A lucky break. A scavenge comm unit. That is all. But deep in his chest, a knot had begun to form. Back on Helion Drift, the squad initiated Protocol G, sensor sweep and lockdown. They scattered motion mines, scrambled their own visual feeds to prevent sniping. Miko knew that trick too. He triggered 2 mines remotely, using a looping audio feed from an old Vaughn distress signal. It echoed through the canyons like a dying scream. 2 soldiers broke formation. Miko waited, then took one, next shot, non-lethal, but disabling. The other screamed for backup. The commander barked orders, but the team's cohesion was unraveling. Miko moved again. He never fired twice from the same spot. He let their fear grow, let the darkness press in. He was no longer a soldier, no longer human in their eyes. He was something else. The term passed between them. Shadow Eater, an old Vaughn myth about a creature that hunted in silence and never showed its face. Their superstition turned against them. 3 down. Council members leaned forward, eyes fixed on the disintegrating mission feed. Someone whispered, "Why didn't Earth send him to the diplomatic forums?" Drelt answered without turning. Because they knew. They knew what he was. He's still one man. One man who's dismantling a squad that cost us 5 years of training. By now, the Vaughn commander had abandoned silent signals. His breathing was sharp, frantic. "What do you want from us?" he screamed into the void. Silence. Then Miko's voice, smooth and low. "I want you to tell them. Tell the council what it felt like when you realized you were prey." That broke them. The last 2 fired flays into the air. Desperation beacons meant for extraction. No reinforcements came. Miko let them live, watching as they dragged their wounded away, stumbling like drunk giants beneath the alien moonlight. He recorded every second, then sent the footage back, to Earth, to the Council, to every intelligence contact he still had access to. Not as a threat, as a message. The Council reviewed the data in grim silence. A predator species humbled, tactics outclassed, technology bypassed. This was no random Earth soldier. This was precision, patience, adaptation. Humanity had been underestimated because it hadn't revealed its sharpest edge. Until now, Arelt stood slowly. His pride forced him to speak. This sniper, he is not normal. He is an anomaly. The Kirel emissary responded calmly. And every species has them. The difference is, yours lost to him. Badly. That silence returned, heavy and absolute. And across the stars, in a clearing far from the fallen Vaughn patrol, Miko watched the horizon burn faintly with their extraction vessel's trail. He didn't chase it. He didn't need to. He'd already done what Earth had asked of him. Make them remember. The Galactic Council reconvened under a shadow heavier than war. 12 seats once draped in casual superiority now bristled with tension. Word of the failed extraction hadn't just spread, it had fractured alliances. The Vaughn Dominion, humiliated before the entire council, teetered between silence and fury. Commander Drelt stood in the center ring, arms crossed, golden skin dull beneath the council lights. He let them live, he growled, voice low but razor-edged. He toyed with them. That is not honorable warfare. That is psychological degradation. No, corrected the Kirel emissary without flinching. That is demonstration. It was restraint. Your squad would have shown none. The Silthian speaker flickered with shifting resonance, its crystalline body humming in sympathetic vibration. The message is clear. He didn't act for vengeance or chaos. He acted with precision, with purpose. And what is that purpose? Arelt barked, teeth flashing. To change how we see them, the emissary said, and how they see themselves. Silence followed. Every member knew what this meant. The humans had not asked for war. They hadn't even asked for respect. They had simply acted, quietly, decisively. And now, the entire council saw them differently. Not as flumbly, not as weak, but as something far more dangerous, patient. Earth's representative, a middle-aged diplomat named Rillen Hart, finally stood. He had sat wordless through the last 3 sessions, letting the silence stretch, letting the truth become undeniable. His voice was calm, soft, but unshakably clear. You assumed we were primitive because we stumble, because we laugh too loud, because we argue and contradict ourselves. But we learn, fast, and when threatened, we adapt. You pushed too far into our zone under the guise of exploration. We warned you. You ignored us, so we sent a man who doesn't miss. Arelt glared. One man doesn't change the fabric of galactic law. No, Rillen agreed. But one man showed you he understand it better than you think. The council voted. It wasn't unanimous. Pride resisted until the final moment. but the majority chose caution. Earth was to be granted provisional status as a strategic anomaly species, a term reserved for races whose unconventional capabilities required special diplomatic treatment. They would receive a neutral seat at the council, not equal, but no longer disregarded. Observed, considered, feared. Drelt left the chamber first, his cape dragging across the floor like a storm cloud. Back on HFY on drift, the wreckage of the last squad had been recovered. Scorch marks, silent weapon imprints, no trace of Miko Vance. He was already gone, vanished before the retrieval drones arrived. He left no message. He never did. But he watched. From a ridgeline half a continent away, his scope followed the council vessel as it hovered, scanned, and departed. They weren't searching for him. They were verifying his absence. He broke down his rifle. Not disassembled, buried. No souvenir of war was worth the weight of what came after. The mission was done. Earth had its seat, and he had his silence again. He moved through the rocks like a shadow, eventually returning to his dropship nestled between canyon walls. It was small, outdated, patched together with surplus parts, but it flew. That was enough. Inside, he sat in the pilot's chair and stared ahead as the engine hummed to life. But he didn't launch immediately. Instead, he reached into a panel beside him and withdrew a small, worn-out data slate. One message blinked on screen. Objective complete. Return at your discretion. Earth acknowledges your service. No medals. No ceremony. Just that. He powered off the slate and leaned back. He wasn't returning. Somewhere deep in space, the Council would now spend months rewriting protocols, training soldiers to counter a threat they barely understood. They would study human psychology more seriously. They would wonder how many others like him existed. And they'd never find out, because Miko wasn't a weapon made by Earth. He was a warning Earth had simply allowed to whisper. In the quiet of his cockpit, the stars unfolded like scattered embers across the void. He watched them in silence, one hand resting on the worn grip of his flight stick. Above him, unseen by any satellite or scanner, 3 Council vessels passed at a respectful distance. None veered close. None tried to hail him. They had learned it. He exhaled and launched into the dark. The stars shifted around Miko's vessel as he dropped into the shadow of a gas giant, hidden from major traffic routes. His fuel cells hummed softly, silent against the vacuum, while the ship's systems ran lean. Just enough power to live, not enough to be found. This far from central space, he was invisible. A month had passed since the Council vote. News had trickled through the undernetworks. Earth's new seat, the quiet rearrangement of power, the sudden, unspoken respect that followed them in the diplomatic circuits. But Miko wasn't listening for praise. He was watching for patterns, and patterns had begun to emerge. First, the Vaughn cut off contact with Earth entirely. No trade, no communication, not even a public statement. Then, rumors, silent deployments near Earth-aligned colonies, tactical drills under the guise of resource recovery. Drelt was wounded, and wounded predators don't heal, they retaliate. The first sign came as a pulse, a faint emergency beacon embedded in old Terran code, so obsolete it would have been dismissed by most listening stations. But not Miko. He caught it in his sleep. His system still ran passive filters tuned to Earth-forgotten languages. It was a single word, incoming. He set course immediately, cutting across unpatrolled sectors, skimming asteroid belts, jumping blind through micro-wormholes. When he reached the edge of Sol's influence, Earth was a faint blue dot, but dozens of small flashes hovered near its orbit. Not explosions. Landings. The Vaughn weren't declaring war. They were testing Earth's defenses. And Earth, bound by its new diplomatic position, was hesitating, trapped between retaliation and diplomacy, between power and perception. Miko didn't wait. He landed in the dead of night, just outside a retired Terran defense installation buried beneath Greenland's ice. No one greeted him. No one needed to. The base still recognized his clearance, opening with a sigh of hydraulic doors and dust. Inside, racks of forgotten weapons lay in silence. No one had touched them in years. Miko walked through like a ghost, pulling what he needed: tools, hardware, old manuals, personal calibrations burned into muscle memory. And at the back of the base, behind 4 layers of biometric locks, he found it. A rifle. Not the one from Helion Drift. This one was older, heavier, its metal nicked from real wars, its grip worn smooth from use. It was his first, the weapon that earned him his name in whispered training halls. He ran his hand along it and exhaled. Outside, atmospheric scans showed 3 Vaughn dropcrafts coasting in low orbit, masked as civilian transports. Their landing trajectory was slow, calculated. No cities, no open attack. They were targeting research posts, places where loss would appear accidental. Earth's leaders convened, argued, stalled. Miko moved alone. He deployed from the Greenland base with a rifle strapped to his back, suit recharged and synced to the orbital net. He didn't need permission. He didn't ask. Earth had rules, but he'd never belonged to them. Not really. He was the solution they never wanted to admit existed. The first dropcraft lowered near a hydromining facility on Mars' second moon. Miko was already there, lying motionless in the regolith, watching through the fractured shimmer of heat distortion. He fired once. The ship didn't land. The second was harder. It deployed counter-sniper drones, swarming systems that calculated shooting angles mid-descent. Miko shot one of the algorithms mid-pulse, crashing the entire network. The ship panicked, deployed its squad too early, and scattered into unplanned terrain. He neutralized them in 13 minutes. The third came without warning. It bypassed sensors, masked behind an asteroid's thermal shadow. Miko caught the tail flicker just before entry. He moved fast, faster than protocol advised, ditching stealth for raw speed. He reached the predicted landing site on Europa with only minutes to spare. He didn't have time for finesse. This time, they saw him. The Vaughn soldiers disembarked, weapons ready. No scouting, no underestimation. They were hunting him, but he didn't run. He stood, calm, centered in the snowy plain beneath a shattered sky. He fired once before they could speak. The squad leader dropped. The rest opened fire. He vanished. From ridge to ice shelf to shadowed crevice, Miko outpaced them. He was not a myth now. He was proof. He fought without backup, without a command center, with only skill and precision born of silence. Each shot answered an unspoken challenge. Each step said, "We see you, and we are not afraid." When the last Vaughn fell, Miko approached slowly, stopping beside the squad's comm relay. He didn't destroy it. He transmitted. Not words. A data packet, encrypted, undeniable. Footage, biometrics, trajectory paths, satellite confirmation. It went directly to the Council. They opened it immediately. Drelt stood at the center of the war room, watching the footage with a cold, sick expression. His best operatives, outmatched by one man. Again, he turned toward the Sylthian speaker, trying to form an argument. But there was nothing left to say. Across the chamber, Rillenhart watched silently. Then he spoke. Once. "You'll move." Back on Europa, Miko sat at the cliff's edge, staring into the planet's glacial abyss. His rifle lay across his lap. His body ached. He was tired. But he would not stop. Not because he loved war. Because every quiet sniper's breath was a prayer to prevent the next one. Because peace only matters when it is respected. And respect, he had learned, was never given freely. It had to be earned. Or taken.